The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act Part C, also known as IDEA Part C mandates, and the Division on Early Childhood Recommendations recognize the bidirectional nature of human development and seek to build family capacity to address the developmental challenges of infants and toddlers with disabilities. For many parents of young children with disabilities, this is their first experience with disability, and they benefit from learning evidence-based strategies that they can implement with their child through their daily interactions. The problem under investigation in the current study is that while research findings demonstrate the effectiveness of parent training models in early intervention services, not all early interventionists endorse this model. Early intervention providers vary in their adherence to a direct service or a parent training model of service delivery. The guiding research question for this study is, will there be structural differences in the form of increased volume in the hippocampal region of participants based on their participation in either the direct support or parent training model of early intervention service delivery? The quasi-experimental variable for the current study is the type of early intervention service, and will have two levels of early intervention service provision: the direct model of service delivery and the parent training model of service delivery. In the direct service delivery model, the early intervention provider directly teaches the infant or toddler with the parent present but not actively involved. In the parent training model, the early intervention provider models intervention strategies and mentors the parent in implementation of these developmental support strategies. The dependent variable in the current study is change in hippocampal volume as measured by MRI. The data collection and procedural steps for the MRI in this study will follow the protocol described by Wilkins and colleagues. It is hypothesized that while participants in both groups will experience structural change of the hippocampal area, the participants in the training model of early intervention will experience more significant change in the hippocampal region in the form of increased volume. Two current studies found that both passive and active observation result in some behavioral change. In a 2020 study of observational learning, Marshall and colleagues reported that the motor imagery involved in the mental rehearsal of action execution in the absence of movement among participants, as in the case of learning through observation, allowed the observational learners to focus their resources solely on generating kinesthetic imagery while engaged in observation. In a study of active observation and motor imagery during performance of a novel adaptation task, pre- and post-testing of performance times were conducted. Findings revealed that observational learning combined with motor imagery resulted in an implicit learning and improved performance. It was predicted that the active observation plus motor imagery instruction group would experience significant improvements in performance that would be demonstrated in reductions in task completion time from the pre-test to post-test. The researchers found that the passive observation group and all other training groups experienced some hand-eye coordination improvement. These studies on learning through observation found that both passive and active observation result in some degree of learning. Based on these empirical findings, it is hypothesized that both participant groups in the current study will experience structural changes to the hippocampal area. Experience-dependent structural plasticity of adult learner brains has been observed in diverse training contexts, including taxi drivers, whose structural MRI scans of the hippocampal regions revealed enlarged posterior hippocampi correlated with their training and years of navigational experience. A significant increase in gray matter volume was also found in the brains of trained taxi drivers, demonstrating a capacity for local plasticity of the hippocampi among this participant group. In a related study involving training and brain plasticity, Pang and colleagues investigated rapid changes in brain activity during learning and training effects among another taxi group. The researchers in this study investigated the impact of taxi driver training and long-term navigational experience on the connectivity patterns of the entorhinal cortex in the healthy human brain. The study participants included 20 taxi drivers and 20 control subjects, participants with no driving experience. This study used fMRI to examine the resting state functional connectivity patterns of the entorhinal cortex in taxi drivers compared to the non-driver control group. It was reported that compared to the control group, taxi drivers with training and driving experience exhibited structural plasticity in the form of greater functional connectivity between the right anterolateral entorhinal cortex and the left hippocampus. To ensure that participants are matched for intelligence in the current study, eligibility for study participation will be based on average intelligence scores as determined by the Raven Progressive Matrices test. 60 participants will be included. They will be invited by their service coordinator. And before participating in early intervention services, all participant parents will undergo imaging of the hippocampal area using MRI to establish baseline hippocampal structural measurements. Participants will include mothers of toddlers. Mothers will be between the ages of 25 and 30 and will be African American, Caucasian, and Mexican. Parents in both groups will participate in 1-hour early intervention sessions 2 days per week with their toddler and early intervention provider present across a 4-month period. After the 4-month early intervention period, MRI of the hippocampal region among participants in both groups will be conducted to examine whether there are volume differences of the hippocampal areas at baseline and post-intervention based on early intervention type. It is hypothesized that the parent training group will experience increased hippocampal volume. However, regardless of the MRI results, findings from this study will be published to add to our current empirical understanding of learning in the context of the 2 widely practiced early intervention models of service.